So today is February the 19th. It is Tuesday, and it is the beginning to the lesson on how to change fractions, decimals, and percents back and forth. It's weird, and this is the best way I can explain this. We have to know how to do this. So if we're out in the world and someone says, like, that shirt's 30% off, we got to know what that means, okay? The weird part is another person might come up to you and say it's a third off or it's a fourth off. We got to know that when we are, let's say, cooking, what the fractions mean. What if it's changed to a decimal? So that's where we're going first. Eventually, we'll do like word problems. Right now, we're just trying to swap them back and forth, okay? Now, to kind of show you this first thing, this is a method that Miss Willis uses. She calls it like her triangle. And it is a method that if you can write it down like Friday, like you can't copy it, you got to know it and literally write it down. It'll help you get through the problems, okay? Now, just to point out a few things. You can probably already see, but here are your three letters that we're working with. We're working with fraction, we're working with decimal, and then we're working with percent. Now, the one thing about this triangle is you have to go this way. You cannot go backwards. You cannot skip a step to get the right answer, okay? So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you just using one, okay? Let's say, and I'm going to kind of move it over so you can kind of see it on this side. Please stop, guys. Listen. Okay, so what it is we can ask you to change it, take a fraction, change it to a decimal, change it to a percent, but we can also ask you to take a percent and change it to a decimal or fraction and so on. There's a bunch of different ways. So, if I have a fraction, let's say, Ms. Donahue asks you to change 4/5, and it is a fraction, okay? 4/5. And I am right here. I gave you a fraction. And I want you to change it to a decimal. So I want you to look. Going from fraction to decimal, it says to do what? Divide. That means that right here in my calculator, I am typing 4 divided by 5. I am dividing in my calculator. Okay, so 0.8 or 0.8. Now, you have now gotten the decimal. You've now gotten the decimal. 4/5 is the same as 0.8 or 0.8, whatever you want to say. Now, let's say the teacher says, I want you to change it to a percent. So I'm going to do times 100. So in my calculator, I take 0.8. I do times 100. And it's 80. Now think about it. Make sure you add the percent sign. Because it is a percent. Okay? Now, the last thing is if, let's say the teacher gave you 80% and you didn't know the fraction. You don't know the fraction. You're going to take whatever the percent is. And look at what they did right here. They put it over 100 and make it a fraction. Here's why. Because every percent means out of 100. If it says percent, it means out of 100. Percent sign even looks like a 100. It is a 1 and 2 zeros. So, if I take 80%, and I put it over 100. So I take it and I put 80 over 100. Now you're trying to make it look like a fraction. I want you to think about this. You're going to use the ABC button right here. So you're going to do 80, ABC, 100. And you should get 4/5. Okay? So we just used what I call that triangle successfully to get all three things. We could have started here and gotten that. We could have started here and then gotten that. It doesn't matter as long as you go in the order, you know, that she's saying. Miss Willis. Okay? Now, that is her method. So she resorts back to that, especially if she gets confused, and she looks at that triangle. She'll drop that triangle down and use it, okay? Now, my method is just a little different, but it's the same thing. And you don't have to, and I'm just going to jot it over here. All I do is use numbers that I already know. Such as, if I go over here and I make 3 columns, okay, I make a percent. Of course, I pick up the pen that's not working. I'm going to change it to a decimal, and I'm going to change it to a fraction, okay? I'm just making 3 columns. I want you to think about this. If you use the number 50%, we all know 50%. We know 50% is what decimal? How much money? 0.5 or 0.50, yes. 50 cents is 50%, right? And we know that 0.5 is how much written as a fraction? 50 out of 100, which simplifies? 1/2, yes. So all I'm saying is this. We know this, or we should know this. We know that 50% means 50 out of 100, and that 50 out of 100 simplifies to 1/2. I want you to notice something between these 2 columns. What if you pretended and the decimal was right here? How did I get over here? Move the decimal twice to the
right, left.
1, 2 to the left. If I wanted to come from 0.50 to 50%, I'm going to move it twice to the left. To the right. Like I'm going to go back and forth. So like, well, watch. Let's say I give you 0.25. How do I get it to look like this? To the right, twice, which is also, I'm trying to show you kind of like a cheater method, but then not. Watch. 0.25 times 100 is 25%. Please stop. Times 100 gave me that. If I do 25 divided by 100, it gives me that. Okay. Percentages to fractions, I usually just take that, 25%. I know that it means 25 out of 100, but then I simplify it. 25 ABC, 100 is 1/4. So you can use either method. You can use this or this. It is up to you. The problem is this. It gets confusing going back and forth between so many different ones. So kind of start working with me now, and let's, kind of start getting it embedded in your brain which way you're going to do the different styles. Okay? So let's look at the first one here. It says to write each decimal as a fraction. Now, if I look up here, the decimal to the fraction is kind of like 2 steps. And it works. I mean, if I take 0.448, because that's the number, 0.448, and I do what it says, times 100, 44.8, and then I put it over 100. a minute. .8 over 100. What just happened? Did you get a fraction? Because I didn't.
No, you did not.
Okay. So, here's what I've had to do. Because it has to do with that when we change this times 100, you get a decimal right there in the middle, 44.8. Well, you can't put 44.8 on top of 100 and expect it to be a fraction. We can't mix a decimal and a fraction. But we've actually known a different way since probably 5th grade to do this. It's a little easier. I want you to think about it. In the world of math, we really shouldn't say .448. A good math teacher says 448. What column is that in? Thousandths. You just gave me a fraction. And you put it over however many zeros are past that decimal. Now, here's the only trick to that. You gave me a fraction, but all fractions are going to have to be in simplest form. Use what button? ABC. Anytime you're working with fractions and the ABC and you're wanting to simplify, do 448 ABC 1000. 56 over, okay, does that make sense? You've got to memorize the decimal place values, though. You've got to know. So like this one, if we were to read it, it is 1 and 875 thousandths. Now, I wish they weren't all that, but that's okay. So, start out, write it the way it is. 1 and 875 thousandths. Now, that one, just leave it. It's a big one. It's the same as that one. But simplify 875 ABC 1000. 7/8. And I kind of wish you'd put both of them. That kind of tells me what you're doing to get here. Like how you got here. Okay? So the last one, or number 3 here. .008. That 8 is in the thousandths. And they won't always be. I don't know why we did that, but that's okay. 8 ABC 1000. Listen, be careful. You need ABC button. 8 ABC 1000 is 1 over 125. Okay, listen, there's something wrong, then go back. The biggest thing about this is going to be like, if they ask for a decimal, give a decimal. If they ask for a percent, give a percent. Does that make sense? Like, try it again. It's 8 ABC 1000. Now, it's not point. Like, just do 8 ABC 1000. And it should be 1 over 125. Did you get it?
Yes, ma'am.
Listen, y'all need to make sure your calculator's working. That's the other thing. Okay. Now we're going to change what we're doing. We're changing from a fraction to a decimal. Now, I personally, looking up at this little triangle, it helps. It makes sense. Let me just show you. Okay. To go from a fraction to a decimal, look, it is one step. Divide. Top divided by bottom gives me the decimal. One step. So, what it's saying is divide. 7 divided by 20 equals
0.35.
And you don't have to write that every time. I'm just trying to show you in case, because you're going to need these notes later. 0.35 or 0.35. Okay, now, going in with this with a mixed number, just keep the 4 in the front. It's going to be a big 4. And do 3 divided by 5.
3 divided by 5.
0.6. That needs to be put back with that 4. Okay. 11 divided by 25. 0.44. Listen, y'all got to know when these calculators are like not giving you the right answer. No, because you people are keying it in wrong, and then you're like, here's my thing. If you're telling me 4.4, it's wrong. So we got to know when the calculator, like we've done it wrong, when we've keyed it in wrong. Now, the next section, write a percent as a fraction. Now, to get from a percent to a fraction, if you're looking at the triangle, all you have to do is whatever the percent is, put it over 100 and simplify. And I do this naturally because I know, and this is what y'all kind of need to get embedded in your brains, is 8% literally means 8 out of 100. Here is your 1, here is your 0, and here is your 0, meaning percent always means out of 100. So, the only thing we have to do, please stop, is not divide, but we need to simplify. So the only thing we need to do to get this as a fraction is simplify it now. So, 8 ABC 100 to 25ths. So I take 76%. I put 76 over 100. It now looks like a fraction. Use my ABC button. What is it? Over 25. Okay. Even though this one is 291, it doesn't matter. Put 291 over 100. And it is going to be a mixed number because 100 goes into 291 twice. Whoop, I typed it in wrong.
It says 291.
Yes, 2 and 91 100ths. Listen, no little U's on your paper. When you write this, it has to be written 2 and like 91 100ths. No little U's. Okay. So the next one. Now we got to change a fraction or write a fraction as a percent. Now, I have to do this in 2 steps, and it is going back to this triangle. Take your fraction, okay, whatever it is. We're going to divide it. Then we're going to do times 100. So we're going to divide and then times 100 to get a percent. I don't even know yet, guys. Okay, so here we go. So 3 over 40. To go from the fraction to the decimal to the percent, I'm going to do this step first. 3 divided by 40 equals
75 hundredths.
Thousands.
0.075.
0.075. 0.075. Yeah, my problem is this, guys. Grades have slowly started going down in here a little bit, and I think it's kind of from the sillies or whatever. Okay, 3 divided by 40. So 3 divided by 40 equals, and I get that. But that's the decimal. To get it to a percent, we now need to do times 100. That gives us 7.5. But you got to have the percent sign, or it is wrong. 7.5%. Okay, 11 divided by 25 gives me 0.44. Then I'm going to do times 100, 44%. One divided by 8. Times 100. 12.5%. Okay. Now, on the back, there are 2 other things we need to conquer, I guess. They just rewrote the triangle in case it'll help you so you don't have to flip it over 100 times. Starting out, if you are going to change a percent to a decimal, okay, this is where I go back to my method. You can do this. You can take the percent, put it over 100, and then divide, which is what this says. Like 9% would be, going up here would be 9 over 100. And then it's now a fraction divided. 9 divided by 100, and it's 0.09. That is the decimal. Like, you can use this triangle. So, like 924%. If I take 924 and I put it over 100, yeah, 9.24. .78 divided by or over 100.
0.007.
Once you start doing these, you start realizing there's other tricks, but 57 divided by 100 is 0.57. 19% is going to be 0.19. And 57.3 divided by 100 is 0.573. So I just use the triangle. I just keep looking up here. But by Friday, I need to be able to put that on my paper. Like, you gotta know it. Okay, last part, writing a decimal as a percent. Now, this one's kind of easy. To go from decimal to percent, we're just going to do times 100. So, I take 0.02, multiply times 100, and I get 2. But it is 2%. Okay. 0.00803. Whoops, I did it backwards. Times 100. .803%, 16.2 times 100, 1,620%. Now, this is what I would do if I was you. I would keep this out. Keep it out because you're going to have to, as these questions change up on the homework, you have to kind of go back and look at your notes to see what you did. Here we go. This is, you could probably get a good bit of it done in class. 4, 5, 4. You're welcome. Okay, so tonight's homework, the one thing is that we got to read the directions. Such as, starting out, this first part says, okay, it says take each percent and we're going to write it as a decimal, but we're also going to write it as a mixed number or a fraction in simplest form. So it's kind of like two answers. Okay? Take these, change them to percents, and so on. Okay? Going down the paper, fraction or decimal as a percent. Percent as a fraction in simplest form. You basically, you just kind of have to, before you start each section, look at what they're asking. Maybe go back and look at that triangle. Okay? On the back, it is basically the same thing. They're just having you pull numbers out of charts and stuff. Okay? Ordering fractions. We've actually done this before. Okay? Mixed numbers. And then the last part, yeah, that's the bottom of it. Okay, so I'm going to sit here and work some and probably add some helpful hints in a few minutes. So what I am doing is I'm going to work some of the problems off math homework in hopes to be able to help you a little bit. I'm not going to do them all, just a little bit. I am referring back to the triangle that we used in class. It's just kind of on the side. So, here we go. So, the first part says, we're going to write each percent as a decimal and as a mixed number or fraction in simplest form. So, they basically want it all three ways, okay? They gave us a percent. Now, whenever I see a percent, because that percent sign is behind it, think of it as 8 over 100. Do that first because 8% means 8 over 100. And 8 over 100 is a fraction. It is a fraction. Right there, bam, it is a fraction. Now, it may not be in simplest form, but it's a fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my calculator. I'm going to make it simplest form using the ABC button. 8 ABC 100 equals, and I get 2/25. That is the fraction that equals. That is that. Bam, done. The only other thing I need is a decimal. So looking back at the triangle, if I have a fraction and I need a decimal, I can just divide. So, I can divide 2 divided by 25 equals, and I get 0.08. That is the decimal, 0.08. So, I have two answers, my fraction and my decimal. It doesn't matter if you give me the decimal first, it's just that's the way my brain kind of works. Okay?
What do you have to do to get the decimal?
The decimal I divided. 2 divided by 28. So I took the fraction that I had for using the triangle, and to change it to a decimal, I divided. Top divided by bottom. Okay? The blank is supposed to be these two answers, but I just keep leaving them over here. It's okay. Okay, so I'm going to do another one. Let's say, I'll do this one. 0.6%. Now this is where it gets a little weird. 0.6%. You cannot put 0.6 over 100 and say it is a fraction. It is not, because you would be having a decimal 0.6 and a fraction 100 on the bottom. So what you've got to do is, and I kind of think of it as doing it backwards. I'm going to take this percent and I'm going to change it to a decimal. So once you think about it, if I take a percent and I change it to a decimal, it would be, so start out 0.6 over 100, but we're not using the ABC button. We are using the dividing button. So it is 0.6 divided by 100, and I get 0.006. Now that is the decimal. Uh-huh.
Somebody did something wrong with this, because every time when I do times something, it always has to
Clear it out, baby. Y'all gotta know how to do these. You got those weird letters right there. Hit second, reset, and then it went away. Try that. Now, that is only the decimal. Now I need it as a fraction. Guys, that 6 is in which column?
Oh, in the thousands.
Thousands. Thousands. Tenths, hundredths, thousands. So you're going to take 6, put it over 1,000, and then we're going to simplify it.
It's 500.
500. So that is my other answer. So one is 0.006. One is 3 over 500. Okay. Now, I'm going to go down to another one. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Going down to, let's say, number 5. On number 5, they want you to take a fraction or a decimal, like that one's a decimal, but they want you to change it to a percent. To a percent. So, if I have a fraction and I want to take it to a percent, I would divide first and then times 100. So, I'm going to do, like if I do number 5, it would be 32 divided by 50 equals, like that's what I'm putting in my calculator. And I get 0.64. But now I need to change it to a percent by doing times 100, which is 64%. 64%. Listen, I'm not even on the back yet. I wish y'all kind of just stay with me, because that's why I'm trying to, like, help you through a little bit of it. Yes. Okay. On number 3, that means, like, when you look at number 3, that means 320% means 320 out of 100. Now, that is written what I'm going to call correctly, but it is improper. So we need to put it in its simplest form. So if we do 320, ABC 100, there is the mixed number, 3 and 1/5. That's the mixed number, 3 and 1/5. Like that is the fraction mixed number we're looking for. Now we also need the decimal because they wanted two different things on this one. So if you think about it, that 3 means the same as putting 3 point something. But we need to figure out the back end of this thing, okay? And the back end...
Teachers, we have misplaced a set of keys. If you find some extra keys in your classroom on a counter or decimal, please come to the office. Thanks.
That back end of this decimal is going to come from the 1 and the 5. The 1 divided by 5. So take that fraction, 1 divided by 5,
0.2.
and it's 0.2. So my new decimal is 3.2. Okay, so percent, fraction, decimal. Uh-huh.
Do you have to put the answers in the box?
Nah, I'm just kind of putting them here. You can if you want, but okay. I'm gonna kind of skip down. I'm just gonna kind of go around doing something. I don't know. I'm gonna go down to number 7 here. Write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. Okay. Now start out by thinking 7.5% means 7.5 out of 100. Okay. Now, you can't do like ABC button. But what we can do is, you got a fraction now. If we change a fraction to a decimal, we divide. Ooh, wait a minute, I'm getting a little confused. Okay, write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. Here's the problem. I want to show you something. You can't use the ABC button. Like 7.5% means 7.5 over 100. But when you use the ABC button, you get syntax error. Because you just combined a decimal and a fraction. That's why I knew I couldn't do that. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of weird. I'm going to literally divide it. 7.5 divided by 100. Whoop, let me clean it out. Okay, 7.5 divided by 100.
I got 0.07.
Okay, so this is my new number. But I want you to think about it. They want it as a fraction in simplest form. Is that a fraction? No. But I know if I read that thing with a place value chart, I shouldn't be really saying 0.075. I should be saying 75 thousandths. And here's the reason. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So take 75, put it over 1,000. Now simplify it. Well, it's, which is 3 over 40. Well, Kira, what we were finding was this. When we were trying to do these, and tell me, like, if Willis is giving you a trick to do these, please tell me. We were trying to get from that percent, which is down here, and we're trying to get to a fraction. Which, I get, it means that. Like, that's what it means. But my question is kind of like, what do? You can't mix that decimal with that fraction. So that's where my brain had to say, okay, I can't mix the two. I changed it to a decimal and then back to a fraction. And I don't know if she gave y'all a trick. Did she give y'all a trick to try to get that one?
No, that's the one we did easy. Like, we could just do that on the top of our heads. What?
Not to a fraction. I can do it. I can do that this, but 3/40. Yeah. Yes.
I'm stuck on number 6.
Okay. On number 6, it says 0.18, and we're going to write each fraction or decimal as a percent. Listen, guys, that is a what? That 0.18 is a decimal, right? How do you get to a percent? Right, times 100. You just take 0.18 times 100. Now, be careful. You're okay.
So complicated.
It is just confusing, yes.
And I don't really like having to flip the page over and over.
Well, rewrite this on another page. That's fine. Okay. Listen, that's why I keep telling my kids is that it is not that any of this is hard, especially since you guys have a calculator, but it is confusing. That's why I have to keep referring back to the triangle, or I refer back to, hey, what if I wrote this as a fraction and I use my place value? Okay? All you can do is try it, and then that way tomorrow we can go through and see what we got right or wrong. The back, to be honest, I'm going to give you a hint in case you're there. I would take, to be able to compare these, they're wanting to know which one's the least and which one's the greatest. To be able to do that, you're either going to want all common denominators, or what I did is I changed them. I took 7 and I divided by 25. And I got a decimal. Then I did 1 divided by 5. And I got a decimal. I did that with all of those, and it helped me to be able to compare them. Because they're going to ask you which one's the least, what happened the most often or the least often, and things of that sort. Okay, so we'll work on one of those when we get back. Okay, so we have now returned from lunch, and I'm going to start by doing a few right here on the back, and maybe we'll go back to the other ones. I wanted to say one thing. We talked about, right before we left for lunch, when completing this question, they are wanting you to look at these different fractions and do stuff like which one is the most, which one is the least, which one happened most often, and things of that sort. Now, to be able to compare fractions, you would need to have all the same denominator. So you could do it that way. But to me, the easiest way to do it was to take it and just turn them into decimals. So I want you to think about it. If I take 7/25 and I divide 7 divided by 25, I get 0.28. Okay, now I'm going to do the next one. 1 divided by 5. I get 0.2 or 0.20. Right now we know that that is more than that. 28 cents compared to 20 cents. Like, we know that that is more than that. Okay. 23 divided by 100 is 0.23, and so on. So if you would keep doing that with those fractions, then figure out the question's answers, like which one this one says, do more kids say they want to see into their future, which is this one, or become invisible, which is that one. And you would look at the two decimals and figure out which one more people want to see. Okay? Same thing with these on number 20. I would write them out as decimals. Then go back and put the fractions in order from least to greatest. Okay. Looking at 21 and 22, it says write each decimal as a fraction or mixed number in simplest form. Okay. Well, looking down here, this would be 14. The whole number 14. And then the 5 is in the thousandths column. So I would put it over 1,000. We only got like 8 minutes. Have you started it? You already started it?
I think so.
Okay, look on that wall then. If not, they're on my table there. Okay, 5 1,000ths needs to simplify. 5 ABC 1,000, which is 1 over 200. There's like a whole stack of them right there. There you go. So that's my final answer. Okay. Taking ones like number 24, where it says write each fraction or mixed number as a decimal. Changing fraction to decimal. Divide. Like 5 divided by 8. Gives me 0.625. Okay. The two that are really different are these two. We've talked about this year, but it's been a long time. This is where they find percent of a number. So like this one, they're wanting us to find what is 45% of the shots that he took. Well, he attempted 20, and he only made 45% of them. So what they're asking is this: what is 45% of 20? So what that means is change this to a decimal, which is 0.45. Of means multiply. And that's what you type in your calculator. 0.45 times 20. And that is 9. So he scored 9 out of 20 shots. That's how you find percent of a number. Of meaning multiply. So like this one, they want to know the price of this thing. The sale price is going to be 75% of $12. So 75% of 12, which is 0.75 times 12, will give you that answer. Okay, it is all the same thing. Decimal to fraction, fraction to decimal. Keep going back to this triangle. Keep it handy. Put it right next to you. I'll even go over here to like number 14. It says write each decimal as a percent. So decimal to percent on my little triangle here says times 100. So I do that. Times 100. And I get 0.22%. On this, I would have to do, because if you're going to change a fraction to a percent, I'm going to have to do divide and then times. Fraction to decimal, decimal to percent. So, I'm going to do 1 divided by 250 gives me 0.004. Please stop. Then I'm going to take .004 and do times 100 to get the percent. I'm doing what the triangle says, it's just I can't show the triangle. Okay. I'll kind of go up, maybe do number 12. Just trying to give you some examples. So they want us to change that to a fraction. That to a fraction. Okay. So 0.06% means 0.06 over 100. But because we have a decimal and a divider line, we can't leave it that way. The only thing we can do is divide. So I'm going to do 0.06 divided by 100. Gives me this crazy looking decimal, 0.0006. Now, my mind is saying, now I got to change that thing to a fraction. Well, how do you read this thing? 6 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. Woo! So that is 6 over 10,000. Now, I did find this interesting. You need to simplify it. 6 over 10,000. But is it a fraction that your calculator just gave you?
No.
No, that is not a fraction. That is a decimal. Listen, if it is above 1,000, you are going to have to know how to do simplifying on your own. It won't do, the ABC button won't do this. So, can 2 go into 3? 6. Can 2 go into 6? 3 times. Can 2 go into 10,000? How many times? 5,000. There's your fraction that is the same as that percent. All you can do is try them. Look at examples, look at the ones I did, or look at your notes in the little triangle. And go back and forth figuring them out. Okay? That's really all you can do. Try them. Everyone should have answers for trying them all. Thank you.